I've tried every diet. The fat-free diet, the keto diet, the cauliflower soup diet, powders, potions, pills.
Alison Cork, lifestyle expert, author, and former food critic, transformed her life by losing 5 stone and reclaiming her health. Inspired by her journey, she wrote Fit and Fabulous Over 50 to show you how to rewire your second act.
The defining other thing I did to lose weight, and I lost the better part of 5 stone, was if you do not change the way you eat, you will not lose weight. In other words, you cannot out-train a bad diet. If I, as somebody who ate for a living for 10 years, didn't understand what I was eating, God help the rest of me.
Fit and Fabulous Over 50. Why did you decide to write it now?
Whether I like it or not, this is my second and final act. It's a philosophy of life. How do we live in our second act to get the Pepsi Max out of life?
What would you say would be the 3 most important points of being fabulous over 50?
I can see a lot of social media comments coming back. Brace yourself.
Hello, my fellow leaders. Welcome back to Anatomy of a Leader with me, Maria Vorostovsky. I'm an executive headhunter, career coach, and host of the show. Here, we talk about how to find your calling, how to succeed in business, and how to live well whilst doing so. I am bringing Anatomy of a Leader live to a venue in London. If you'd like to be the first to find out about it, please make sure that you follow the link in the show notes to be added to the waitlist. And don't forget to subscribe or follow the show wherever you're listening. Alison, welcome back.
Hello.
Hello to Anatomy of a Leader.
You had me back.
I could not wait. I mean, we spent so much time talking. I don't know how long that conversation was, and we didn't even cover we didn't scratch the surface. And then your lovely little clip went viral.
I was so surprised.
So
Genuinely.
was I, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it really touched a nerve. So why do you think that is?
Oh, I think I know why that is. It's because we all assume, given that we're, potentially retiring a little bit earlier, some of us, that we've got this long and wonderful retirement ahead of us. And what people don't really absorb is that their sense of being and place and community, which is covered brilliantly by Dan Buettner in The Blue Zone, is the largest and most important factor that contributes to your longevity. So when you suddenly take yourself out of the environment that was so important to you during your life, like your workspace, I think 60-something% of marriages occur as a result of people meeting in the workplace. So it's really sort of a seismic part of people's life. When you suddenly stop being there, for a lot of people, that's an off the edge of a cliff moment, and they don't know who they are anymore. And that is very bad for your health, period.
There's so many people that commented aligning with exactly what you're saying, but also saying, well, your job, how sad it is that, you're defined by your job and you have no hobbies and no interests, that you're completely defined by your work. So there were a lot of
It's not me making that up or proposing it. That's a fact. Yeah. And people are defined by their job. And there's nothing really wrong with that, as long as when you leave your job, you have a plan. And that plan is, I was a great doctor, but I also loved golf or, theatre or singing. So I'm going to go and devote my time, now that I've got more of it, to doing those things. It's just about being immersed in something that gives you intellectual pleasure and stimulates you. And that can be being a doctor, a dentist, a golfer, a singer. It can be anything, but it has to be something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you have no plans of retiring.
No, for me, it's just that sort of line that just goes on, of doing stuff that I love.
Yeah. Well, before we get into the next stage of your life, I want to back up a little bit, because we didn't cover quite enough in the last episode with regards to you and your brand, which is Alison at Home.
Yeah.
We didn't even start a conversation about that. And it's also prompted by the little clips I'm watching of you on social media of you dressed up in this very 90s lighting, clothing, talking about creating meals. And it's this kind of throwback, and it's a Alison that I don't know. So, no. And I don't know how many of our listeners know that side of you as well. So,
very few, I should think. I mean, there have been some wonderful, predominantly ladies, who've said, I watched that The first time round in the 1990s, I made the nut wreath that you've just demonstrated. One lady said she made it and it lasted 20 years. But
wow.
Yeah, exactly. To answer your question, if I go right back to the beginning, my first ever business was a publishing business. And when that went public and I decided to exit, I had the question, which is, what am I going to do next? And I thought, well, I'm going to do the thing that I think is really going to feed my soul. And at the time, I wanted to be the British Martha Stewart. Now, this is very timely because she's just had this wonderful Netflix documentary made about her, which is a fascinating insight into how a woman who started as a private chef became the owner and face of a $1 billion brand. And, the remarkable story. So I thought, you know what? We don't have a British Martha Stewart. We don't have somebody who encompasses lifestyle, everything that comes under the roof of a house, so to speak. So that was what I founded in 1995-6. It was called Alison at Home. And to begin with, it was very much cookery, decorating, gardening, hence the At Home in the Country and At Home for Christmas series, which is what you're referring to. And fast forward, 20 odd years, 25 years, and I'm now entering a new phase of life, which is still very much about lifestyle, but I'm slightly repurposing it for, where we are now and where I am. I'm now 61, so I've got a lot more experience behind me, and health and well-being, which is still part of lifestyle, of course, has become very forefront of my mind and very important to me. And I've taken a lot of these women on this journey with me. So they're also now 60 and we're all having the same thought process, which is, where do we go from here? What is the next 10, 20, 30 years going to be like? And what do we want them to be like? So my whole brand, whilst it's still about lifestyle, and there'll still be some interiors in there, and there'll certainly be a load of food and lots to do with nature and travel, fundamentally, it's become more a philosophy of life. How is it I want to live in my second act? Because whether I like it or not, this is my second and final act. I think the longest documented living human being, or woman certainly, was Jean Calment, who lived to 122 years, and I think it was 216 days. Okay. Wow. I don't think I'm going to get there. I'm not even sure I want to get there, but I wouldn't mind hitting triple digits, but only if I do it with a quality of life. And so Alison at Home is going to become, in terms of a brand name, it's going to become Alison Cork, not because I'm an egomaniac, but because I want the emphasis to be less on the home bit, the cushions, the curtains, the what have you, and more on, it's a philosophy of life, really. How do we live in our second act to get the Pepsi Max out of life?
How did you arrive to this point about deciding what your next step, your next, as you call it, final act is? Was there a particular moment? Has it been a gradual realization of how do you tie everything that you've done and creating something new? Talk me through your thought process, creating that idea.
So I can actually pinpoint it very specifically, which was about 3 years ago. And it was that moment where I looked in the mirror, which I think a lot of women in their 50s do in their 50s, and did not like what I saw. So I think so many things are happening in your life as a woman, particularly in your 50s. So it could be that your children have grown and they've just flown. So that's a very emotional moment and it leaves a gap in your life. It could be that you were out of the workplace and trying to come back into the workplace, or in the workplace and have now been out, now about to be out of the workplace. You might have been married for 10, 20, 30 years and that relationship will have changed. You're just coming to terms, the menopause, of course, let's not forget the menopause, that's going to hit you in your 50s. So all of these things are happening. And then you turn around and your parents have suddenly become older and you might be caring for them because 97% of caring duties fall to the women of the family. Yeah. You won't be surprised to hear. No. So there are all these sort of pillars of activity going on. And it's not surprising that you can suddenly feel absolutely battered by all of this. And so, of course, your own health and well-being go to the bottom of the pile. as usual. You don't have time to think about those things. So I looked in the mirror and thought, I'm not really very happy with what I'm seeing. I've put on a lot of weight. I just look a bit sort of lifeless and listless, and that's not me, and I don't want to be like that. And, long story short, I took some advice, and I thought I was going to a gym because my attitude, like most people's, is, well, I just need to exercise and then all the weight will fall off and it's all going to be fine. And I went to this gym, which actually starts with nutrition before they let you anywhere near the gym gear. And they said to me, well, tell us what you eat. And I said, well, it's a bit indignant. I said, well, I used to be a restaurant critic. I think I understand food.
I'm the expert here.
I'm the expert. And the guy was very sort of sweet and indulged me and said, well, just tell me what you eat. So I told him what I eat in a day, or ate in a day. And he looked at me and said, okay, Alison, he said, you do realize that's about 95% carbohydrate, don't you? And I said, okay, then what's wrong with that? And he said, well, if you actually want to lose weight, you're going to have to up your protein intake, and you're going to have to change the way you eat, because I can exercise and train you till you drop to the floor. But and I'm actually quoting him here, I'll never forget it. But if you do not change the way you eat, you will not lose weight. In other words, you cannot out-train a bad diet. And I, like many people, out of ignorance, actually, despite the fact that I was meant to know about food, did not understand food and did not understand nutrition. And this is, this subject alone we could talk about for 2 hours, because I feel so strongly and quite angry about the fact that we don't teach our children nutrition in schools, or at least not in a good way, not to the best of my knowledge. It's so important.
It's literally your foundation. And just
100%.
going back on that point about losing weight and exercising. I mean, I exercised after having kids. I mean, I was had a good diet before I had kids, then had kids, breastfeeding, wanted lots of carbs, cakes, pasta. And then even though I'm not breastfeeding anymore, I'm still maintaining that diet, and you're in it. And then I exercised for a long time, for many years, and nothing was happening. And then I was like, you know what? I want to be fueling my body for weight training, which is what I got into as well. And as soon as that happened, the weight literally just, as they call it, melts off.
Fell off. Yeah, it's so interesting. You've raised so many interesting points there. Firstly, you talked about pasta and cakes. When people say to me, just in a nutshell, Alison, cut to the chase, how did you lose all the weight you lost? I say, don't eat beige food.
Yeah,
that's it.
Just eat the rainbow.
Think about it. Beige food, cakes, pastries, biscuits, bread, some types of pasta, beige food. Name me beige vegetables. I can only name 2, like turnips, potatoes, then I run out. It's because you should eat the rainbow. So it's just so absolutely fascinating. But the other thing is that once you're eating properly, the defining other thing I did to lose weight, and I lost the better part of 5 stone from my
That's incredible.
heaviest weight,
wow,
which wasn't that long ago,
wow.
Was weight training. And a lot of women, I think, have a big issue with weight training. Because they will always say to me, yeah, but I don't want to look like a man. It's like, no. You're confusing having to train like a man, which you should do, with looking like a man, which you won't do.
Yeah.
You will look defined. You will create the shape that you probably want. I mean, a lot of women, it's about arms, it's about strength. And it is absolutely phenomenal in combination with the right diet. But you've got to do those 2 things together. And the other thing is that people often say to me, yeah, but you see, I just don't have time. It's all right for you, Alison. You must be in the gym 2 hours a day. And it's like, no, I'm not. I'm in the gym 3 times a week for 1 hour. I am a time-pressed person of my own choosing. And it's not about spending every day in the gym. It's about what you do. It's the quality of the exercise. And, we could go into long side discussions about how you weight train and the importance of the speed with which you do the exercise. All of these things are the minutiae of getting the most out of the time that you spend in the gym. But if you partner that with eating a high protein diet, and I was taught to eat 1 gram of protein per pound of my weight, my body weight, a day to help lose weight. If you're just trying to maintain your weight, it can be a little bit less than that. So, I am trying to eat between 130 and 140 grams of protein a day. That's actually quite a lot.
Yeah.
But it shows how important protein is. And when I did those two things, changed the way I ate, principally eating more protein and weight training, the weight just fell off.
I think what also happens from a person's experience of food is when you're having that diet, you stop craving the biscuits and the cakes and the pastas because something changes within you that you don't even want those things anymore. And I think that was the critical thing in my head. It's I don't want it. I don't want to eat it, because I think a lot of people think that, it's so hard. And it's you look at it, it's you need to live, life is about enjoyment. And yes, it is. But you also begin to realize that you don't enjoy those things as much as maybe you think you do, or certainly how you used to enjoy them. So I think that shift is really interesting, because it doesn't feel like you're giving up something.
No, it doesn't. But it's so important what you've just said, because, and I said what I'm about to say once on social media and absolutely got slaughtered by a couple of people who didn't know, because they just didn't like the message. They just didn't want to agree with it. But again, it is fact, it is true. So sugar, which is really what you're talking about when you talk about treats largely, and sugar is in food that we might even think is savory. I mean, people wouldn't really think of bread as having lots of sugar in it. It does. So it's about ultra-processed foods, fundamentally. It's highly addictive. And some people would say, and have said in their surveys, that it's more addictive than cocaine. It is an addictive item. And we all probably eat more of it than we think we do. So the recommended intake from memory is about no more than, I think it's 8 or 9 teaspoons of sugar a day. And I think there are 7 in 1 can of Coke. So you just have 1 can of Coke and you've almost reached your daily intake of sugar.
Yeah.
So forget any chocolates, sweets, biscuits, other fizzy drinks, wine, all sugar in them.
Yeah.
And the sugar is the thing that you were really referring to. We become addicted to it without even realizing. I was addicted to sugar. I still have a sweet tooth, but I've learned to cook without using refined sugar, which is most of the recipes in my book are around that principle, how to still enjoy food but not be eating the bad stuff. And it is really difficult. It is actually difficult to wean yourself off that. That was the hardest thing for me in that process that I took to change the way I ate, I should say. But once you do it, your point is absolutely right. You stop craving it and you start craving all the things that are feeding your body. And I was having just this conversation at breakfast this morning because I ordered salmon and eggs and somebody commented on that. And I said, no, my body is telling me I want protein. I don't want the porridge. And it's wonderful because protein also sustains you longer. So you don't get those ups and downs that are those sugar crashes, which encourage you when, especially if you're on the move, to say, oh, okay, croissant, protein bar, because I've been told that's healthy. It's probably not. You want my recipe for chocolate orange protein balls, not that protein bar. It's all in the book.
Before we go on to the cooking aspect of it, how long did it take you to break that sugar craving? So from, when you stopped, talk to me about that moment, because, was it sudden? Was it gradual? Was it difficult for you? And how long it took? Yeah, it was difficult. And I knew it would be difficult because I really was addicted to sugar.
I could eat several family bags of minstrels or whatever M&Ms in one sitting and not even think about it. In fact, once I was sitting on the floor watching the television and ate so much chocolate that when I tried to get up, I fell over.
Oh, wow.
I literally fell over because I was dizzy, because it was just a rush. So I was properly addicted to it. And so coming off it was always going to be really tough. And knowing that it would be tough, that's why I went to get help. And actually, that's a fundamental principle, I think, of succeeding if you really want to change the way that you feel and look, is to buddy up with somebody to give you support, because you probably are going, only the tiniest proportion of people are going to have the insane self-discipline to see that through by themselves. So you do need, even if it's just a member of your family, just saying, come on, you can do this. You wrote down what you wanted to do, you stick to it. But I went to a professional, and they were just, necessarily brutal with me. They said, you're going to eat 1,000 calories a day for the next 3 or 4 months. You are not going to eat sugar. These are the foods that you're allowed to eat. You are going to be accountable. You're going to put it all into an app, and I am going to check it every day. And yeah, I mean, no, it was serious Big Brother stuff.
Wow.
because their success, and I was paying them to help me, was predicated on my success. And they are professionals, and they wanted me to succeed, and they were going to give it the best shot they could to give me my best shot. So it was to answer your question succinctly, it was really tough for about 3 or 4 months, because A, I didn't like only eating 1,000 calories a day, and B, it's like coming off a drug. Yeah. But when you see the weight coming off for the first time in your life, and I tried, like most women, I tried every diet, the fat-free diet, the keto diet, the cauliflower soup diet, whatever, powders, potions, pills. And that's a lot of trying by the time you hit your late 50s. I started in the 80s with the Rosemary Conley hip and thigh diet. Most people probably don't even remember that, probably weren't even born then,
No.
but I've been going that long on diets. And so it was just joyful to suddenly look in the mirror and say, okay, well, I'm still overweight, but I'm not as overweight as I was last week. And I can see, like, I've lost, we've just stood on the scales. And they would literally get me down to my sort of underwear, so to speak, and take photos every month. So you could see your progress shots. Again, accountability, absolutely critical, because what is it that we're all brilliant at? Deceiving ourselves. Yeah. And you said something earlier which really resonated with me. You talked about, because we want treats, and it's important. Why? Why is it important? Why is it we think we deserve treats all the time? I don't think my mother's generation got up in the morning thinking, well, I deserve a treat today. I'll go and buy, because, not least, there weren't protein bars and things available. But we live in a culture now where it's largely about consumption, and often about food consumption. You walk down the high street, the explosion of coffee shops. Are they selling you bananas? No, they are not. There might be a tiny bowl of 3 of them on the counter as a sort of, byproduct. They're selling you croissant and cakes and cheesecakes and all these things that visually are meant to tempt you. One Starbucks coffee can have 700 calories in it.
That's crazy.
Can you imagine? When I was on 1,000 calories a day, it would be, okay, have your Starbucks. It's not nutritional. Have it. You've got 300 calories left for the rest of the day.
That's going to keep you going.
Knock yourself out. But I learned that for my 1,000 calories, I could actually eat 3 meals. It didn't seem possible, but once I'd understood the calorific content and nutritional value of foodstuffs, food ingredients, it was possible.
So what were you eating?
It's a very good question. So I was eating a lot more protein than I was eating before. So chicken, so lean protein, chicken, turkey, egg whites, just making egg white omelettes, not whole egg omelettes, although eggs are absolutely fantastic and I eat loads of them. So lean protein and good carbs. Now, I had a conversation yesterday with someone who shall remain nameless, who is a perfectly intelligent adult, who was surprised to know or discover that vegetables are carbohydrates. But they're good carbohydrates. So they were saying, well, can I, if I can't eat carbohydrates, can I eat vegetables? And it's like, no, yes, you must eat lots of vegetables because they're not beige food. Yeah. They're not the bad sugar-laden carbohydrates. So, broccoli, one of our greatest superfoods, you can't eat enough of it. Blueberries, knock yourself out. They are carbohydrates. So to answer your question, protein, good carbs, drinking more water. And I did take a few supplements. I'm not a massive fan of endless supplements. I think if you're eating properly, you're probably getting most of the supplements that you need. But when you are in calorie deficit because you're trying to lose weight, you should probably take supplements just to make sure that everything else is, you've got the right intake of everything else.
Yeah. I mean, 1,000 calories, it just sounds impossible, doesn't it?
It's not. So let me tell you typically what I would eat in a day. So I would start with something like a turkey bacon, mushroom and tomato frittata. So that would have a couple of eggs in it. Maybe I'd put some egg whites in as well, just to bolster it up. And that would be, a whole plate's worth of food. So
visually it looks like it's substantial too.
And that's such an important part of it. It's tricking your brain into thinking that you are really being given big plates of food. And I'm a greedy girl. If somebody, I did actually on one occasion, this was when I was on the Everest trek, and food was more scarce, but, I wanted my protein. So I asked for the only bit of protein there was, which was egg. And the man came and very ceremoniously put 2 eggs in front of me. And I burst into tears. It's like I think I was just emotional because wasn't much oxygen up there. But it was like, oh, you can't be serious. I need food. I want a plate of food here. Yeah. Anyway, so that's breakfast, a frittata. Then lunch would be something like a beef chili. That's about 470 calories. So the frittata would be about 300 calories. So we're on about 770 so far. We've just had lunch. And this again is a big portion of low-fat beef or venison mince. Venison's delicious, by the way. Again, with passata, tomatoes, some peppers, garlic, onions, bit of balsamic vinegar, some kidney beans, Bob's your uncle. And then dinner, typically, I probably, again, if I'm trying to keep the protein levels up, go for something like prawns, have a prawn stir fry with, very little oil, but the prawn stir fry with some sweet corn, maybe some beans. 3 plates of food. And if I actually cooked them now and put them on the table in front of you, you probably wouldn't believe that was 1,000 calories. And B, you'd be really pleasantly surprised at how much you can eat.
It sounds nice. This is the kind of food that I like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not about bread and water and sitting crying into your black coffee in the corner of the room.
Counting your M&Ms.
One. But you can count your M&Ms. But the point is, I suppose I'm making, that I could put, I don't know exactly what the calorific content of an M&M is, but, I could maybe put 20 of those on the table, or a plate full of eggs and vegetables and chicken and what have you, and they're the same in calories. They're not the same nutritionally. One is clearly much better than the other. But the irony is that when we eat the bad stuff, we can only afford to eat much less of it. But the problem is we eat more of it.
Yeah.
And that's where the imbalance starts.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What's the one type of food that people must stop eating immediately for a healthy life?
Sugar. That's such an easy question.
Yeah.
Just, we can't cut it all out, nor do we need to. It is okay to eat some. Now, I'm talking about refined sugar here. There's the white granulated stuff principally. Sugar. We're eating too much of it. And in places that we probably don't even realize it exists, like bread, for example. And what we want to do is eat more unprocessed foods, get back to the raw ingredients, cooking from scratch. Ideally eating more of the stuff that's produced even locally to you, but that's quite tricky for a lot of us, especially in cities. But just going to the supermarket and buying the raw ingredients, vegetables, fruit, meat, fish. You can eat almost anything, as long as you are cooking from scratch and eating unprocessed foods.
I wonder if that's where the biggest struggle for people is, because we live increasingly hectic lives where it's get your kids to school, get to work, very intense days, eat a sandwich by your desk, don't even go out for lunch, then come home, you're tired, you just want to lie back on your sofa and watch TV. You don't really have the energy to spend on, going to the kitchen and cooking these meals. And I feel like that's where this lovely packaged foods, or those beautiful croissants or sausage rolls, or whatever it is, they're easy, they're immediately satisfying, and they are fast.
So convenience food is highly profitable, obviously, for supermarkets, where we buy 96.6% of what we consume through major supermarkets, but they're not what we should be eating. But to go to your point, for me, it's a bit of it's an interesting debate, because people will normally say, when you throw at them this question of it's very important that you try and cook from scratch and eat unprocessed foods, I don't have the time to sort of shut that conversation down. I'm just really busy. I work a full-time job. I have kids. I have this, I have that. I have a full-time job. I have kids. I do all of those things too. But what I learned, and again, I was a disbeliever to begin with, what I learned is that it's all about the planning. And I was re-educated in food and re-educated in how to plan to avoid failure. So what does that mean? It means that now I do one food shop a week. I used to shop kind of ad hoc as I desperately sort of reached out for something to eat. Now I shop once a week. It happens to be on a Sunday. That's the day that works for me. I plan my food for the week for myself and the family. I write it all out, so I only buy what I need. So I'm not in danger of going into the supermarket and my arm just reaching out for the biscuits because I can't think of anything different. My shop is fast because I know what I'm buying. It's cheaper because I'm only buying what I need. And then I go home and I prep the meals. And the prep is the key to the answer to your question. If you can take that 2, maybe 3 hours on a given day of the week to prep your food and get it in the freezer, in boxes, or in the fridge, or wherever it needs to be, you then don't have that danger moment when you go to work because you've got your lunch already in a box Tupperware in front of you. So I know Tupperware's not sexy, okay, but it works. And when you go home and you're exhausted and it's like, I'm just going to pour a glass of wine because I just need to be anaesthetized against the day, you know, and I can't be bothered to cook. It's there. It's winking at you in the fridge and it's ready. And all you have to do is put it in a pan and heat it up, or in the microwave or whatever. And it really, really is about the planning. And I know that might sound a bit prissy, a bit sort of smug, but honestly, it's the reality. My life changed when I started planning, making lists, shopping efficiently, and putting a couple of hours into prep. And I actually saved time. I save time on how much time I spend in the supermarket and how much time I spend in the kitchen. I happen to love cooking. If you said to me, what would you do as a just sort of fun activity on the weekend? Let me bake a cake. You know, I love baking. But in terms of my week, I'm like everybody else. I'm harassed, I'm under pressure. You know, I just need to get stuff done. So it's all about the planning. Honestly, I don't want to sound like a sort of, you know, a school teacher, but it just is about planning and being efficient. And,
like
and one should not use time as an excuse.
It's like all the unsexy, excuse me. It's like, it's all of the unsexy things that really make a difference. It's, you know, the routine, the time blocking, and then it actually frees you up the rest of the time.
Honestly, it really does. And I know that people don't like to hear that because ultimately it's another form of accountability and personal discipline, organization. And I honestly think, and again, I'm a fun-loving person. I love a party, I love a drink, but I honestly think that we're in a place and time in society where the balance somehow of the work we should expect to be doing to live a productive and good life and the work we are doing, they're out of kilter. And, you know, I hear these words, you know, we talked about earlier about treats and what I deserve and, you know, I need this. And it's like, do you? What? I just think we're out of balance in what we expect out of life and what we expect to put in to get the right result out. I really do. I think we all have to sit down and give ourselves a good talking to, which is, you know, if I want to be a healthy, strong person, I must acknowledge that I need to fuel the machine properly. You know, you can't put vegetable oil into a Rolls Royce and expect it to take you to Brighton. It's not going to. So it's about eating properly, not drinking too much. You know, in Britain, there were some terrible statistics out a few days ago about the rise in alcohol-related deaths. It was truly shocking. I think they've quadrupled or something. It was awful. or maybe gone up 40%. Don't quote me on that because I think I've got that number wrong. But it was a big increase.
We'll make that clip go viral too.
Yeah, yeah. It was a big increase in the last few years. But just sort of shocking. And I think we've just lost that sense of, dare I say it, discipline, personal responsibility, accountability, and focus. It's not all about treats and croissant and protein bars.
Where is this coming from? Is it that we've forgotten what real reward feels like, and it's just this sort of cheap, quick, easy thing that's instant?
I honestly, I do. And I'm sure I'll get a lot of comment for saying that. But I do think that. And I think it's not just literally about food. It extends to the whole way we approach life. I think a lot of people are feeling very insecure and confused about life and how to navigate it, particularly young people. And I think when you're in that position of uncertainty or vulnerability, you can grab at what seems to be most satisfying and reassuring, and the thing that's easiest to grab at because it's closest to you. And for a lot of people, that's food. That's comfort eating, because it's like, okay, I'm not having a good day, I'll have a chocolate bar because that's going to make me feel better. And actually, it probably will for a minute because it's got stuff in it, but particularly dark chocolate, which I love. It does stimulate the happy hormone, the serotonin. But it's not a long-term sensible solution. And actually, as you know, I've written a book about rewiring your second act, which is Fit and Fabulous Over 50, How to Rewire Your Second Act. And the very first chapter is called The Happiness Index, because I wanted this book not just to be about this is how you eat, this is how you exercise, and it's sort of very military, because it's not. It's about how you live. It's a philosophy of life. And how you eat and how you exercise will inform your happiness and your satisfaction with your life. And it's a virtuous circle, or if you're doing it wrong, it's a vicious circle. And I think that, our mental health is so tightly bound up with what we eat, particularly what we eat, as well as how we exercise. And a lot of people don't understand that connection. Your brain and your gut are interconnected. They are sending each other messages. And if your gut is not happy and not balanced and over acidic and not alkaline as it should be, more alkaline, then your brain is going to be getting messages, which is, we're not happy. Yeah.
You are made up more of bacteria than you are of your own cells of your body.
Yeah. I didn't know that, but I could believe that.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly the proportion, but it's a significant difference. And the microbiome and the bacteria there, depending on the mix you have, will be sending messages to your brain to tell you what they want to eat.
Wow.
So if you have the right bacteria that is producing the right chemicals inside your stomach, which is basically the pharmacy inside your body, they will tell you to eat all those good things like the broccoli and the blueberries. Yeah. And then if you are feeding the wrong kind of bacteria, they're going to ask for the sausages and the bacon and the M&Ms, or,
I've got this lovely picture in my head of bacteria writing out shopping lists of what they want.
There's a great TV series about this that has these really cute knitted 3D animations about it, which was brilliant to understand what's actually happening inside you. But it's like we are controlled by this bacteria, and whatever they want to eat is what it's going to tell you.
But this is what we should be showing kids in school.
100%.
From a really early, they're not stupid. They can understand this, and they will then hopefully go home and say, Mummy, can I have this for tea, not that? Yeah. And they will inform the parents as well, because another thing, and somebody was talking to me about this yesterday, they were saying as a parent of young children that they feel that children sort of write the rules these days. And this whole business of young girls going into makeup shops at an absurdly young age and buying retinol products, which they shouldn't be anywhere near, and the person I was talking to worked in one of those makeup shops and said it was shocking. The mothers would come in with the daughters, and the daughters would say, "Mummy, I want this and I want that." And the mother would just buy it for them because she felt under pressure, presumably. So it needs to be a two-way conversation. If the kid is going home saying, "I've just learned today about broccoli. It's like a superfood. It's like, it's way better than whatever, a Snickers bar. Can I have some of this for supper?" And so education. I managed to get to the age of 57 and I was supremely ignorant. I'm so ashamed to say it, but I want to say it out loud, because if I, as somebody who ate for a living for 10 years, didn't understand what I was eating, God help the rest of you. I did not understand what I was eating.
With your book, Fit and Fabulous Over 50, why did you decide to write it now?
Well, I think because rightly or wrongly, and I'm embarrassed to say it in a way, I was 57 before I learned how to be fit and hopefully fabulous. And it, I don't want to be trite and say it changed my life. It was actually much bigger than that. It felt like it gave me a totally new chance at life, as if somebody had just drawn a line in the big book of life and said, "Okay, all right, you made quite a few mistakes up to the age of 57, but you know what? We're going to give you a second chance. So you can actually start from scratch. In fact, we're going to allow you to feel better than you did at 30. And that is literally, without wishing to sound in any way arrogant, because it did take effort, and it takes continuing effort. You have to be consistent in your habits. That is literally what happened to me. So at 57, I was not happy with the way I was. Changed things. I'm now 4 years down the line, 61. I've managed to keep the weight off, which is, again, is a big challenge for people. Most people put it all back on, and some within a year. And I feel as if I'm capable of pretty much anything, physically, mentally. I've noticed so many things. So firstly, I now have an annual body scan done. And the last one I had done was about 2 months ago. And it came back saying I had muscle mass of 86.7%, which surprised me but pleased me, because that's muscle is, it's all about your strength, and also muscle helps you burn fat, of course. It said I had a metabolic age of 46, which is 15 years younger than I am. Wow. So I'll take that. Thank you very much. Yeah. And my bone density was that of a 35-year-old. So I'll take that one too.
So you're aging backwards.
So my friends now call me Benjamin Button. It's like Ben for short. So no, but I mean, joking aside, those are the facts which obviously back up that what I've been doing has been having an impact. But I notice other really kind of interesting, quite weird things. Like I noticed that my memory has got better, that my ability to recall stuff is faster and sharper. And I think that's partly because I'm more relaxed than I used to be. And I'm more relaxed because I think I'm genuinely happier. And I think I'm genuinely happier because I'm eating well and my body feels balanced. It feels much calmer than it used to. So those things are really interrelated. And the other weird thing I noticed over the last few months, and the first couple of times it happened, I thought, oh, it's just coincidence. I'm just having a good day. And then it kept happening. We all drop things occasionally, but every time I dropped something, I caught it. It's like, how did that happen? Like something, when you're not expecting something to fall off a table. Yeah. You're not expecting something to fall off a table, or you're standing holding your cup of coffee or something and you suddenly drop it for whatever reason. I just kept catching it. And so my reflexes were really fast. I was thinking, wow, I like this, So it's, oh God, it's like a plethora of things that have changed in my life. But fundamentally, you feel energetic and you feel positive. And look, shit happens in life to all of us. It's not that my life is suddenly a perfect life. It's not. It's a normal life. But the things that happen that aren't great, I am so much better equipped to deal with. And I think that's what it's about. Yeah.
What's amazing to get from your story is we have this expectation that as we get older, things start to, not work so well. Our memory goes, our reaction time, decreases. And in your case, it's got like a huge turnaround, a huge change, that all of those things we expect, you're actually better now than you were, I don't know, 30s, 40s.
Yeah.
And that it is possible to have that kind of a feeling. And now, you don't have such huge responsibilities when it comes to, your kids, for example. You have time for yourself. And I think for many women, when they reach that, so it's like, who am I? Where do I belong?
100%.
What's my purpose in life?
100%. Yes.
And so to have that, to be able to know that it is possible to do that is such a powerful thing.
It really is, because, such is the potential of longevity these days that at 61, I could have 40 years ahead of me. So almost my life again. And I've got the benefit of wisdom and knowledge and experience. A woman at 50 or 60 is a powerful entity. But so many women, I think historically, and I count myself amongst them, would have looked at those decades ahead and thought it's inevitable. It's just going to be a slow process of decline. I'm going to be quite lucky if my husband doesn't go off with a 25-year-old, and I'll be grateful for that. And that's just all out the window. I have way higher expectations of myself and my life. And it's exciting, I'm still fit enough to climb mountains. In fact, I only started climbing mountains 3 years ago. I'd never climbed mountains before that. And now I literally climb mountains. So it's a feeling of kind of wonderment and excitement. And people say, you're very energetic. When you come into the room, I feel your energy. And it's like, because I'm excited. I don't know what's coming next, but I'm ready for it. Whatever it is, I'm ready for it. And I found a key to feeling good that works for me, which can work for anybody. And it is about, fundamentally, I'm going to go back to it time and time again, it is what you eat. If you don't change the way you eat, you will not achieve the result that you want. It's about feeling confident. And we all have a fundamental right to feel good about ourselves and confident. But to go back to a point you made earlier, it's not something which is just going to happen because you want it to and you think you deserve it. So you're sort of sitting there being resentful that you don't look the way you look whilst eating your chocolate bar. You've got to earn it. You've got to put some effort into it. But it's probably not as much effort as people think, as I said earlier.
That's the reward. It just isn't something that you can buy instantly from a shop.
Well, there you go. Which is why so many people don't do it, because we're all into instant gratification. We live in this society, particularly when those of us who live in urban areas, where anything you want 24/7 is there. If you've got the money, you can have it. It's never been truer than today. And unfortunately, when you're surrounded by all of this convenience and temptation, you've got to be fairly strong-willed not to just succumb to it. There's social situations. I know these are a minefield. Just going on holiday, when you're in that discipline of, I want to stay the way I now am because I've lost weight and I exercise. It's strange. The moment you get on a plane, you almost feel like you're in a no man's land where the rules don't count. And they serve you the dreadful meal and say, would madam like some wine? Oh, yes, please. I'll have a bottle of Merlot. As if suddenly it doesn't count. Like it counts,
Don't get me started on plain meals. They're like, would you like a meat or a vegetarian? And I said, is there a vegetable in your vegetarian meal? And there isn't. It's pasta and cheese.
No.
So that really bothers me because, it's like, at some point I didn't eat meat, but I also didn't eat dairy. So where are you? And I was like, I don't necessarily want dairy-free alternatives. I just want the vegetables, please.
But it's, one has to, consistency, a hugely underrated quality in any aspect of life, if you ask me.
Absolutely.
So social situations, coming up to Christmas, a minefield, but you have to create your sort of defense mechanism, your coping policy. And I actually write about this in the book. I have top tips for when you're on holiday, top tips for when you're at a party. My favorite one is when people are pressurizing you to drink. Yeah, I mean, it happens to all of us, right?
Yeah.
Oh, don't be a party pooper, Alison. I can see that's fizzy water. Let me put some gin in it or whatever it is. So my thing is when someone says, "Can I get you a drink, Alison?" very sort of meaningfully, as if to say, because you're not drinking and you're not joining in, I'll say, "No, I'm fine, thanks. Can I get you one?" and just turn it right back on them. But because you know what? I know that people, societally, we want people to join in, to be like us because it's more comfortable. You've just got to tell yourself you've worked really hard to achieve what you've achieved if you manage to lose some weight. It's not easy, but it is doable. Why would you let somebody else sabotage that? What, to make them feel better? No, it's about you.
Everything that you worked so hard for, and then just to please somebody else?
Just to please somebody else, to make them feel more comfortable, because you saying you don't want a glass of Chardonnay makes them feel a bit off because they've just had 3. Tough.
I have to say, compared to 10 years ago, the drinking aspect is massively improved, at least in London, because there's this huge, especially post-COVID, this huge wave of drinking non-alcoholic alternatives. And I have to say, socially, from how it was 10 years ago when I went through a period of time when I stopped drinking and basically being almost berated for not drinking. I was like, wait a second, it's my body, it's my choice. What is it to do with you? And it's very different now. So I think there is less of that. But still in a Christmas party situation where you're like, oh, hey, free drinks. And it's like, oh, free drinks, then I must get my money's worth, my quota, my money's worth of that. For what?
Yeah, exactly. For what? It's a very temporary high, literally, then followed by a hangover, which is not great, as we know. But actually, it's interesting what you say, and I don't know enough about the detail to really analyze it. But there are some wonderful non-alcoholic alternatives. There's very convincing wine and gin that you can't really tell the difference. And I'm a huge fan of non-alcoholic lager and what have you. But I think it's really interesting what you said about demographically. I'd be interested to know which sector of society is drinking less or less pressurized, because overall our drinking statistics are terrible, and the number of alcohol related deaths has risen starkly in the last few years. So it could be because somebody, again, it was very recent, I think it was only yesterday, someone was saying they'd noticed that younger people, by which they probably meant sub 30, were drinking less alcohol. I don't know if that's the truth, but somebody somewhere is drinking more alcohol, that's for sure.
Yeah, that does not surprise me. In my personal circle, it's less, but that's also possibly because of my lifestyle choices and who I choose to be around. So that's just a natural circle. Yeah. So, I'm not, a statistic of, the rest of the UK or whatever. Yeah. So I'm not surprised that that's the case, especially with cost of living crisis and, people being laid off and, just difficult things to deal with. I understand why that might be the case. It's hard. It's really hard. I want to pivot a little bit in terms of, now you're in your 60s now.
Yeah.
And I'm in my 40s now. And the range of our listeners is actually quite broad in terms of ages. But what do you wish you did more and less of in your 40s?
Ooh, good question. Right, so I've got to think back in my head as to what I was doing in my 40s. So I was just having babies in my early 40s. By the way, did you know that women who have babies in their early 40s are 4 times more likely to hit triple digits?
Yes.
So that's really interesting. So I just come out of having my second child. So I would say I was in the throes of, I can answer this question because now I've just worked it back in my head. It's 20 years ago. Motherhood and trying to build a business at the same time. And I think if I had my time again, and I don't have many regrets in life, but this might be one of them, I would approach my work-motherhood balance very differently. I let myself be sucked into it's important that I'm a trailblazing businesswoman and, my children, I can put them into nursery at 12 weeks and it will all be fine. And honestly, when babies are very young, they probably just need their sort of basic needs met of being fed and nappies changed and what have you. But, big but, your relationship with your child can't be short-wired, so to speak. There is no substitute for the cuddles and the time you spend with them. And it's very hard for me to say that out loud, because it's an admission of not having done something as well as I'd like to have done it. I have to say that I'm very proud of my boys. They're wonderful young men, and they still talk to me. So clearly I've done something right. But I think we should not be seduced by what, in a sense, is like societal marketing, which is this is what women should be and what they should do and what you should look like. You've got to go with your gut instinct. And I think I slightly resisted that, because I am quite maternal. You know, when something happens to one of my children, I am a lioness. You know, I will kill for them. So I do have the maternal gene. But I desperately wanted to be seen as this sort of, thrusting businesswoman. So I think I would do that differently. And I would strongly advise any woman who feels in danger of being pressured into what she should be, just to think about what you want to be. And I'm not saying it's wrong to go and work when you've got young children. I did it. I've survived. They've survived. But listen to yourself first and foremost as to what you really feel you should be doing, and don't be afraid to take the time that you need. Because women, biologically, we do stuff that men don't do.
Yeah.
And we should accommodate that.
I think about that a lot as well, because when my first child was born, it was almost this fear. It's, if I stop working, then I'll never get back in it, or I'm going to be somehow penalized, or there was definitely a fear of dropping that side and not leaning into the motherhood as much. And I wonder how many women have the same feeling, especially when they need two incomes to support the family, and having to, go back into work when they're really not mentally or physically ready for it. And what really bothers me about how we structure society is that it really isn't designed for women in either direction, either taking the luxury of time and being with their kids, or going into, continuing their work and having that flexibility so they can still participate in family life in the amount of time that they feel is relevant to them. And I think it's a really difficult decision, because yes, you might want to do the things that you want to do for yourself, but structurally, practically, it's not really been catered to you. And it's only now that we're beginning to even raise our voices to talk about this topic, let alone doing something about it.
Absolutely. And it's so nuanced, because it's going to be different for every woman and what her expectations of her life are. But you're absolutely right. The system fundamentally has been created by men for men, and there are whole books on this subject which have been written better than I can articulate them, but it absolutely is the case, and that all needs to be redressed as part of the bigger conversation of women being able to contribute economically as well as in their role as mothers and partners. And as you know, I spend a lot of time supporting women to start their own business. So it's not that I'm suddenly saying I'm in favour of stay-at-home mums. Not at all. I'm in favour of the system being able to support, cater for, and nurture whatever that ambition might be. Because one thing's for certain, we as a country, any country, cannot fulfil its economic potential until women fulfill theirs. We have a contribution to make, and we should be facilitated in making that. And there are so many ways that can happen. Part of it is not about women at all. It's about paternity leave. Let's say a woman wants to go back to work after having a child fairly early on. If a man were given 6 months paternity leave, then he could be at home and take over that role, allowing his wife to go back in and resume her job at the level it was when she left the job, not demoted or asked to leave completely. There's a big conversation that's very multifaceted that has to be had around this whole subject. But to answer your question originally, I would want a better balance in the way that I approached work and my children, because 20 years on, I can tell you, it wouldn't have made a difference to the business, but it would have made a difference to my kids.
That's interesting. And like the power of hindsight as well. And the reason why I asked that question is because it's something that I'm thinking about, even like Googling, like what do women in their 50s, their 60s regret about not doing in their 40s?
It's a really good question.
Because sometimes I sort of go in this imaginary journey into my very like distant future, and see it so clearly that I'm like, oh my God, I'm so old already. But then I realize I kind of like jump back into my body. I'm like, actually, I'm not that age yet. There's still time to do something. Yeah. And because I think about what do you do with your time now? Because you can have this moment in your 60s, but you can have it in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s. Like there is always the right moment to reinvent yourself.
Yes.
And to decide that the way I have been living isn't suiting me. It doesn't work for me anymore. And then to design a different life for yourself, that you can do that at any moment.
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, in the same way that every New Year's Eve, I write down a list of what I want to achieve that coming year. I'm almost sort of setting the plan in place, so to speak. I think that every decade one should do a bit of a personal MOT and decide if that it might be time to reinvent slightly. I mean, you've seen many famous people in music who've survived for decades because they have fundamentally reinvented themselves, a bit like Madonna, I suppose. She's quite a good example. And I think it's incredibly important to go through that, because you do change. Why is the thing that worked for you at 20 going to fit you at 40 or 50? It almost certainly isn't. So I think it's really important to have that flexibility of thinking. I sort of view it as a form of optimism and resilience, which is, I believe I have the courage to change, because of course the status quo is safe and it's convenient and it's easy, or easier. And I think you just have to challenge yourself and say, am I actually performing at what I believe to be my best? Am I at peak? Probably not. What can I change to get there? And I think it's should be viewed positively. It's not a frightening or negative thing. It's, I've got more in me. How do I get it out? Yeah.
I'm very excited about your book coming out.
Thank you.
Really can't wait to read it. What would you say would be the 3 most important points of being fabulous over 50?
I can see a lot of social media comments coming back. Brace yourself. Okay, so I think attitude of mind is number 1. But that in turn is fed by what you're consuming, quite literally what you're eating, and movement, because movement is all about serotonins, feel good, what have you. So I think those are the 3 things. Your attitude of mind, which is part of your sense of place and purpose in the community. And in fact, whilst we've talked a lot about food and exercise, in The Blue Zone, which is a wonderful book everybody should read, the top factor that determines your longevity is not food and it's not exercise. It's your sense of place and purpose. And I have a chapter devoted just to that. It affects everything. But it is super important that you know who you are, who you're valued by, why you're getting up in the morning, and what it is you're going to do. And that is the most important factor in your longevity of life, but your quality of longevity. And there is a wonderful story he tells in this book about a gentleman who lived in America but was of Greek origin. And I think it was in his 60s that he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And he said, well, if that's the case, then I want to go back to my village in Greece and I want to live out my last few months there, because at least I'll be with my friends. So he went back to, I think it was Ikaria in Greece. And he settled back into life there. And he thought, well, I'll grow some vegetables because at least then I can feed myself and I can give a few to my neighbours. And his neighbours said, well, come and join us at the coffee shop in the morning for a coffee, and come and join us in the evening and we'll have a glass of wine. He had a glass of wine every day. Potted around the village, did a few things. He lived another 40 years. And he'd been diagnosed as, mate, go home, it's all over. You've got to think about that, haven't you? He was
amazing.
Diagnosed with stage 4 terminal cancer. He lived another 40 years.
That's incredible.
Yeah, but I just think it does reinforce this very powerful message. And you know at times in your life when you don't know where you're going or who you are, your identity, it's incredibly confusing and unsettling. It's so powerful to wake up in the morning and go, I know who I am, and I know why I'm here, and I know what I want to do.
It's like having that sense of complete and utter, like I'm in the right place, like I'm okay in my body, and I know what I'm doing. That sense of safety. Yeah,
and I'm meant to be here. And it's almost as if the things which I worried about most in my 40s, like what weight am I? What do I look like? They are no longer really important to me in the sense that I'm happy with them and I know how to stay that way. So they've become less of a noise in my head, and I can focus on the really important stuff, which is, what is my purpose? What can I do? I'm not saying to make a big difference in the world, but what can I do just to be a positive life and not a negative life on this earth? And you can focus on those things when the other bits are not crowding your head as much as they used to.
Alison, I can talk to you for another 3 hours. Really, thank you for coming on the show again. And your energy and your, spark is infectious. And I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom. Can't wait for your book. And just being present here with you.
Thank you so much. Well, you're nowhere close to 50, but there's still some stuff in there that might be good.
Well, I think it's something that is applicable for any age.
It actually is.
I know you're obviously talking to people who are over 50, but as I said, when I jump into the future, I think about that. So, what can you do? What can you do now? Because it's the only thing you can control.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a topic for another time. But, things like dementia, which 1 in 10 of us will now get, those seeds are sown much earlier in life than people think. 100%. And it's all about how we live and our intent. So
Episode 3?
Absolutely. I'm there.
Thank you so much, Alison.
Pleasure.
I am bringing Anatomy of a Leader live to a venue in London. If you'd like to be the first to find out about it, please make sure that you follow the link in the show notes to be added to the waitlist. And don't forget to subscribe or follow the show wherever you're listening.